Welcome to another episode of Farming in Ohio with Chris Bruynis. Today we're going to be looking at farm equipment on the roadways and some things that we need to be aware of. Today we're going to be looking at farm equipment on the roadways. And one of the biggest problems that we seem to run across certain periods of the time is farm equipment.
Yes, absolutely. And again, really there's two seasons for farm equipment on the roadways that is prevalent in a lot of farm equipment. And that would be the spring when we're trying to get crops into the field, trying to get them planted, and then in the fall when we're trying to get them harvested. And so there's two times that farmers really use those roadways, and they have every right to use those roadways. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that farmers have to pay attention to, as well as some of the things that motorists have to pay attention to.
Well, let me ask you a quick question.
Sure.
If I have pieces of equipment on a farm, why do I need to come on the roadways and go down the road?
Well, we need to access the fields. And so, farmland is scattered across all of Ohio and all of our state and county and township roads. And so to be able to access the fields, we need to be able to use the roads to get there.
Is it true that there are some farms that share equipment? Maybe they're 3 or 4 miles away?
That's a practice there is some, but it's not a real common practice. There are some custom applicators that rent their equipment and farmers use it. But in terms of joint ownership of equipment isn't a concept that's caught on here in the United States. It's pretty common in other countries. So.
Oh, okay. All right.
So let's go forward. Just some facts to start with. And again, a car moving at 50 miles an hour, by the time we see that farm equipment on the road, we have about 10 seconds to avoid a collision with a tractor moving at 20 miles an hour. And that's 400 feet ahead. And so, by the time a lot of times we can see further than that, but on some of these roads, curvy, you come around the curve, you come over the knoll of a hill, and all of a sudden there's a piece of equipment. We have to be able to react. And so I think we have to constantly be thinking about, what might be over that hill, what might be there, and drive accordingly. And then the other one, it takes 5 seconds for a motorist traveling 55 miles an hour to close the gap the length of a football field. Well, we know that's 1,000 yards, right? And so, 5 seconds isn't a lot of time. And so, again, especially if a tractor is moving slow, and then nearly half of the incidents between motorists and farm implements involve one of two things. Either a farmer turning left off of the roadway into a field entrance, and to me that's probably the most deceptive turn, because a lot of times with the length of our equipment, we have to kind of go to the right off of the road into the ditch and then turn left. And a lot of times motorists that are following that piece of equipment may assume they're pulling over to let them pass, but actually they're pulling over to make that wide turn to be able to get that implement into that field entrance without going into the ditch and staying on top of that culvert. And then the other one is rear end collisions. I mean, you talk to any farmer, and that's probably their biggest nightmare. Growing up, I had a farmer that had a motorcycle that come into the back of a chisel plow, and of course did not survive that. But that's really a farmer's worst nightmare: is somebody going to come up and end up in a fatality because they ran into the back of my piece of equipment.
I wonder sometimes when I see a large piece of equipment. We are used to, you were talking about turning left.
Yes.
Are there blinkers
There are today. I mean, we've come a long way. Let's talk about some of the safety features that we have on tractors and farm equipment and combines, all the things that farmers will be putting onto the road. And here's just a picture of a back of a tractor. And again, the question that I ask here, that I put forth, is what lighting do tractors need to have to legally be on the road? And so the first thing that we want to talk about is that slow-moving vehicle sign. That was developed at Ohio State in the 60s. Again, it was a project that Ag Engineering gave their students. Back then, we noticed there was a lot of rear-end collisions, and we did not have lights on tractors years ago. And so they were trying to figure out what can we do to make it more visible. And so the requirements now, farmers have to keep these in good repair, and they will fade over time, and they'll get covered in dust out in the field, and we need to make sure to wipe them off. But we need to make sure they're visible 500 feet to the rear and that they're readily identifiable both day and night. So this is a farmer's responsibility. The triangle point is facing upward, so we can't turn it upside down. I mean, it's very distinct. Legally, we have to put it on there. And we want it 10 degrees from vertical, so a little bit not straight up and down, so that the headlight beams will catch that from a car that might be following it. And then 2 to 10 feet above ground in the center of the vehicle, or as near left center as practical. So we'll see them all the way out on the left side, which would be, the side that might be pushing the center of the road. That would be the left side as the equipment is traveling down the road. So that's one of the things we must have on all tractors, all combines, all towed equipment must have a slow-moving vehicle sign.
Does that also include the Amish community?
That also, now it does. It didn't back when we first wrote the law, but the Amish community now, and they also have requirement of a blinking yellow light. But now it's interesting that some Amish communities, and don't quote me on this because I don't know if it's 100% true, but I have seen some Amish communities that haven't adopted it yet. Now, we can write a law, but can we make people follow it? And so I don't know, I'm not going to get tangled into that. But, in my area where I see Amish out and about, they do have slow-moving vehicle signs on their buggies, and they do have a flashing yellow light.
I think it would behoove them to use those safety features.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all hear those stories of Amish buggies being hit, and it's never a good outcome.
Right.
And so, again, if you live in an area that there are Amish, that's another thing to think about. Horses travel slower than a tractor, and so they would be slower yet. Now, there are restrictions on the slow-moving vehicle sign. Again, we can't just put them up wherever we want. They are designed specifically to be on the back of a vehicle that is traveling 25 mile an hour or less. And so stationary objects such as a fence post, here we see a driveway marker. They work really good as driveway markers. You can see them, there's no doubt about that. But it's not something that we want to do. And so the emblem, this is an illegal use of the emblem, and so we want to make sure we're not doing that. But now what happens if we have a high-speed tractor, and they are making more of those today than they used to, and we're seeing a lot of that application in specifically dairy farms, where we're hauling ensilage or silage from the field to the farm. Again, something that travels a little bit quicker, so we have less road time. And so if we have a farm machinery that travels greater than 25 mile an hour, then we need to use the slow-moving vehicle sign and what we call a speed identification symbol, or an SIS emblem. And so that SIS emblem is simply a white sign, a white placard that has a speed limit, mile per hour. That's the maximum speed that tractor will travel. And so it needs to be for those going over 25 mile an hour, and it must signify the maximum speed. And again, shall be mounted also to be visible 500 feet, and it will be on the right-hand side of the slow-moving vehicle sign. So if you're coming up on a piece of equipment or a tractor, there's two things you need to be looking for in terms of signage on the back of that equipment. One would be the slow-moving vehicle sign, And if you see it only, you know that that tractor does not exceed 25 mile an hour. And if you see the speed identification symbol, that'll tell you the maximum speed, but that doesn't mean that the tractor is traveling at that speed. So it's not like a speedometer. It's just what the tractor can do. So let's think about farm equipment. Well, not everybody, but this is a common sight for me to come up behind a tractor with a planter. A lot of the larger planters now fold up and are a little bit narrower than this one, but this particular planter is a 6-row planter with a soybean splitter in the middle. So if you count the rows, there should be 13. And so this is about 16 feet wide going down the road. We know that's wider than one side of the road. And so what are the dimensions that, we have laws in Ohio for vehicles that can't exceed certain dimensions. And so the question is, does farm machinery have to follow those same dimensions? And the answer is no. Farm machinery and farm equipment that's being driven is exempt from the width, length, and height limitations in Ohio law. And that has gotten farmers in trouble a little bit. I've known occasions where we have a piece of equipment that's folded up that might be taller than the train trestle they're trying to go under. And so, we have to be very, very cautious as we're traveling around the roadways in terms of will that piece of equipment fit. And so the Ohio Supreme Court determined that if the right half of a roadway, the side we're supposed to drive on, is not sufficient to accommodate farm machinery or farm equipment, that the operator of the farm machinery is exempt from the Ohio law prohibiting operating a vehicle left of the center. And so as a motorist, I think we need to know this because, we can't just assume that as we're approaching a tractor that they can get over fully on the right side of the road. They legally have the right to be a little bit into the left-hand lane. Now, that doesn't mean that farmers don't try, but having grown up on a farm, there's two situations that just constantly we fight with as farmers moving farm equipment, and it's called mailboxes and bridge guardrails, or guardrails anywhere. It doesn't have to be a bridge, because that's going to limit how far we can go off onto the right-hand side off of the road with our equipment. And so as a motorist, I think we need to be paying attention if we're driving, especially on some of the more narrow rural roads, what side of the road is the mailboxes on? If it's not on the side I'm driving on, then it's on the other side. And we really need to be paying attention. I mean, not that the person driving the farm equipment will not stop when it comes to the mailbox if they can't safely pull over. But if they've already pulled over for a row of mailboxes, I don't think we can just keep going. If we would keep going and run into that farm equipment, we would be at fault because they have the legal right to be there. And there has been cases in Ohio courts that have upheld that.
One of the things that I found that whenever you're in a hurry, it's that time of the year where you get stuck behind a tractor.
Oh, absolutely.
And it seems that the tractors go very slow and they go a long piece of distance.
Oftentimes.
And it's unnerving,
It's unnerving for the tractor operator as well. But here's things that I know talking to my farmers in Ross County. They really try not to move equipment early morning, rush hour, going to work, coming home from work. They avoid a couple-hour block, both ends, if at all possible. Now, this year, with all the rains we've had, it's been a more trying year. And so they may not have always been able to do that. But they really, really try to move when there's limited traffic on the roads. And they also, it's not a law, but it's kind of a courtesy that farmers adhere to, and we can always find an exception. But the farmers that I know, if there's 5 or 6 cars behind and they can safely pull over to let them pass, they will do that. I think that's kind of the rule of thumb that they're using. 5 or 6 cars and it's time to pull over and let them pass. So, it shouldn't be more than a couple minutes delay following a tractor. Now, if there's no place to to safely pull over. And some of our more narrow, smaller side roads, that's become more challenging. Again, you can't expect them to pull over if it's not safe, but most of our farmers are very, very courteous and try to make sure that they are limiting the frustration to automobile drivers.
Another thing, you know, the pieces of equipment that you just recently shown on the screen is like 16 feet. So when you pull over, chances are you're going to possibly want to pass them on double lines, on double yellow lines. Is that legal?
That's a great question, and the short answer is yes, but that doesn't mean that you're not without liability if an accident happens. Here's what I found on Ohio State Ag Engineering, their farm safety website. I tried to find it in Ohio Revised Code. I could not. But what's written there, and I've heard this before, so I believe it to be true, is you can pass a slow-moving vehicle on a double yellow line under the following conditions. 1, the equipment has to be traveling at less than half the posted speed. So if the speed limit is 55 mile an hour, that means the tractor must be 27.5 mile an hour or slower, or it's not legal to pass. We go into some other back roads. I know there are some townships that all township roads are 45. Divide that in half, and then you're at 22.5. And if the tractor is driving at its normal speed, it would be illegal to pass because they're not less than half the posted speed limit. The other caveat that comes with this is that it has to be safe. And so, you know, I was driving here to record this today, and I was just paying attention that if I was behind a tractor and I was driving State Route 28 from Greenfield to Chillicothe, and how many places would I feel comfortable passing a tractor on 28 where there was a double yellow line? I came up with 2. I mean, there's enough hills and curves, and you can't see far enough ahead. You can't assume nothing is coming. And so, you know, if I go to pass, I'm responsible on that situation to pass safely. And the law also states that I cannot exceed the posted speed limit while passing. And so if I'm thinking about a tractor driving 25 mile an hour, or let's say 25 mile an hour, and I can't go over 55, how long does it take me at 30 miles faster than the tractor to get past it? I can't see far enough most places. And so, you know, unless they've pulled over and stopped, I don't know if I would chance it, but...
Well, that's where your frustration comes in. You know, we've been dragging along for 1 or 2 miles. It becomes very frustrating. And when we see the opportunity to pass, we aren't necessarily thinking rationally as we should.
That's probably true. And right along with that, I've seen this 100 times. When the first car goes to pass a tractor and there's a line.
Yep.
The second, third, fourth, fifth car just follow right behind.
That's right.
Believing that first car did a good job making sure there was no oncoming traffic.
Yeah, that is true.
And so, you know, I think we just need to dial up our patience a little bit and make sure that we're looking for ourselves and that there's room to pass safely, especially if we're on a double yellow line. But I've seen that 100 times, that first car go and they all go, and it's kind of like that's just an accident waiting to happen. Here's another question that I hear all the time. Do tractors need to follow traffic control devices? And so when we start thinking about what's out there, signs, signals, flaggers, marking on the road, a sign that prohibits farm machinery on a certain stretch of road or a truck on a certain stretch of road, especially in the spring during the freeze and thaw, we lower the limit on a lot of our side roads that aren't constructed as well. And so, yes, we do need to follow those. We need to stop at stop signs. We need to use our turn signals if the tractor is so equipped, and most of our newer equipment is equipped with the signals. Matter of fact, I think we had to retrofit tractors from 1980 on with a flashing light to the farthest edges of the tractor. So we put duals on the tractor, we'll see those arms that come down over those duals with the lights on them, and they come with that now. But I mean, most of our tractor and equipment has reflective tape, and so we've really stepped up the game on trying to be more safe. But we have to follow the rules in terms of farm equipment, just like any other motorist does. We're not exempt from that. And so, it's just like in a car. We have to do it unless we're directed by a police official or a police officer to do differently. And I really want to conclude, and this comes from the Noble Research Institute, and I liked their advice. And so 6 rules to aid in auto tractor safety. And number 1 is slow down when you see a piece of agricultural equipment. Just put it in your mind that, yes, this is going to be a delay, and yes, I don't like it, but I'm going to be patient. I'm going to slow down, and I know that the equipment is traveling slower than I can. And so, number 1, just slow down, be patient. Number 2, look for those slow-moving vehicle signs and the SIS signs, the speed identification signs, because that'll give you an indication of that speed that equipment or tractor combine can go. And so, be on the lookout for that. And then watch for hand signals. Some of our older equipment that's still being used does not have turn signals. I mean, most of our newer equipment comes with it, but not everybody is farming 5,000-6,000 acres. We still have some small farmers that work off the farm and have small acreage and are using older tractors. And, we do teach hand signaling, especially to our younger youth that want to take a tractor safety training class, which we offer. And so, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to that and understand what those hand signals mean. I'm not sure we teach that in driver's ed anymore. If we've had some bicycle safety, we probably have had it. And so we need to pay attention to hand signals, and that's the right kind. That's not the one you get when you get angry. and so we really want to pay attention to that. And then 3 more here. We're going to pass farm equipment cautiously. Again, it's our responsibility as a motorist to make sure that when we come up on that farm equipment, we can pass safe, legally. The turbulence created by a vehicle may cause the machinery to sway, so we don't want to go flying past a piece of machinery at 60 miles an hour. It can be dangerous for us and them. And then the other thing, we may get off onto the shoulder of the road where there could be gravel. And again, if we're not used to it, or a berm that might be a little bit higher than what we're expecting. And so again, we have to be very, very cautious going around that, and just be prepared for that, I think is the right answer. And then the last one is watch for the flashing amber lights. Like I said, all of our equipment's been retrofitted to that. And so this type of light often marks the far right and the far left of farm equipment, and also watch for that reflective tape that mark the extremities and sides of equipment. So, we've come a long way since I was a kid, but that was a long time ago too. And so, what other questions do you have for me?
I'm just curious. We're talking about the back roads.
Right.
But what about the 4-lane roads, the 2 lanes on each side? Are they allowed to travel on those roads?
Our interstates, no. They are marked, no pedestrians, farm equipment, bicycles. You see the sign when you get on the interstates. Some of our at grade crossing roads that are 4-lane, we still can, but some of them we cannot. It'll be posted. But now let's say that, and I know in Chillicothe there is a situation that we have to use the 4-lane. It is posted, no farm equipment, but there are fields that we cannot access any other way but then going on that road. So State Highway Patrol has given, you have to fill out a form, get special permission. You have to have a lead vehicle and a follow vehicle with flashing lights. And so there's a whole set of rules. Yes, it can be, but typically on our interstates, no. Some of our at-grade crossing roads, it depends on the posted speed limit. If it's 60 or greater, I think is the rule of thumb, then the answer is no.
And the other question, summer months, spring months, summer, fall, that's when a lot of road construction becomes prevalent in Ohio.
Yes.
And
winter and orange barrel season. It's
that is true. And it's, coming here, I travel on a route that has a 2-lane road, and they're working on a bridge. Mm-hmm. And for about a half a mile, you're on a very tight, narrow lane.
okay.
What do people that have farm equipment, what do they do in those cases? Do they have to go all the way around?
Yeah. If it's too narrow for them to get through, they have to do. And I know that, the highway department posts that. They're getting better at that. They'll post that this bridge will be closed from, these 4 days. And so, farmers can't always anticipate, but, if they need to get to a field on the other side and the weather is fit, they may go do that before the bridge goes out. And so, farmers are paying attention to that, and they really need to, but they'll have to go around. I mean, if it's too narrow, they have no other choice.
And the periods of time, the peak periods of time when farm equipment is out on the roads.
Yes.
When is that?
Yeah, it changes with the weather. Typically mid-April till mid-June. This year is going to be pushed a little bit later. We'll see another late June. We'll see some combines for wheat harvest. And then in the fall, we can start harvesting late September. And most farmers make a goal to be done before Thanksgiving. And so, but, the weather this year, we've planted a lot later. I think that'll push fall back. So that will keep the equipment out a little bit later this year.
To sort of sum up, what are a couple of things you would like to tell the listening audience when it comes to encountering farm equipment?
Well, I didn't mention it yet. One of the things, we can't assume that farm equipment is as agile as a car or an automobile. And so, we can make turns a lot shorter with an automobile. They're a lot slower. And so I would just say, number one, just be aware that it's not like driving a car. Number two, increase your patience. They have a job to do. We all eat because of what farmers do in this country. And so I think we need to be patient with that. And be safe. I mean, don't take those unnecessary risks. Yeah, you might be running late, and to me, is a tardy to work or a tardy for your child to get to school, that monumental versus maybe an accident or a death involving farm equipment. And so, I think we just have to realize that we need to share the road and be courteous.
Some great pieces of wisdom. Hey, we're talking with Chris Bruynis. He's an Ohio State University Extension Educator in the Ross County area. Chris, if someone wants to get in touch with you, where might they email your questions?
Well, great question. You set me up beautifully there. And so Bruynis.1@osu.edu. And again, it's a little bit unique spelling of Bruynis, but that Y has been in there forever, so we're not going to take it out. And so it's BRUYNIS.1@osu.edu.
Chris, thank you.
Been a pleasure. We look forward to doing this again in another month.
Sounds great.